1997, Marshall Publishing Limited published a beautifully curated volume titled Ideas That Shaped Our World. The introduction of the book is both enchanting and enlightening at the same time. It challenges our most powerful and loved assumptions of all times. The most enduring idea entertained by humankind in its short history is that Homo sapiens is the center of the universe. Whether as the highest expression of God's purpose or as the pinnacle of a grand evolutionary design, that idea is sublimely wrong. We inhabit a tiny satellite of a minor star on the fringes of one of countless galaxies. We have as species existed for about 250,000 years, which is to say that if the whole of planetary time were represented as a kilometer, humankind has been around for only the last centimeter or so. Descended from apes, we occupy one twig of one tiny branch on an abundant evolutionary bush that contains many limbs that are far more dominant and far more successful. It further says, yet none of that diminishes our sense of ourselves for one very good reason. We alone are capable of abstract thought. But why? Why are we alone capable of abstract thought? Why we alone are capable of metaphysical speculation, spiritual conflict? Hello and welcome to Swayam MOOC on British Poetry and Drama, 14th to 17th century. I'm Dr. Vandana Rajoria, your host, and it is at this crucial question, at this very crucial junction that we meet here today. In our previous discussions, we took up a detailed discussion of John Donne's Valediction Forbidding Morning, a poem where love establishes its strength. Before it, we had taken up a detailed discussion of John Donne's poem, The Sun Rising, where we saw love rising to challenge the cosmos. But the poem which we are going to do today, Batter My Heart, is different. Batter My Heart is not a love poem celebrating love. It is a cry of soul. It is a cry of the question, why reason? So dear students, grab your pen and paper. In our today's session, we are going to take up a close reading and analysis of John Donne's poem, Batter My Heart. But before we proceed further, grab your pen and paper and let us anchor ourselves to today's learning objectives. By the end of this session, you will be able to understand the core emotional and spiritual conflict in John Donne's Holy Sonnet number 14, understand the speaker's intense inner struggle and plea for transformation. You'll be able to explain how Donne employs irregular meter, violent imagery and paradox to reflect the speaker's turmoil. You'll be able to interpret the poem through its layered dimensions, philosophical, theological and deeply personal. You'll be able to explore the fusion of physical violence and spiritual longing. And finally, you'll be able to analyze Donne's use of metaphysical conceits, poetic rhythm and rhetorical figures of speech. To achieve our objectives, we'll move step by step. We'll begin with a recitation of the poem where we'll be closely observing the music, the rhyme, the rhythm and flow of words. It will be followed by an extensive discussion on meter, which is a very important tool and agent in this poem. Then we'll take up close line by line analysis of the poem and we'll dive deeper into the thematic concerns, literary devices and figures of speech. And finally, we'll take a holistic look at the entire poem and its impact. So, let us start. Let us start with a recitation of the poem, and as we read it with passion and power, feel every word. Experience the emotional upsurge which is so very well resonating through the lines, through the rhythm, through the meter. Let us read. Holy Sonnet. Batter my heart, three-personed God, for you, as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand. Overthrow me and bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like an usurped town, to another due, labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. Reason, your viceroy in me should defend, but is captive and proves weak or untrue. Yet dearly I love you, and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie, or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. This poem is not a worship in a chapel. It is a cry of soul, a plea, a request, a prayer to burn, to bend, to break. And as Donne writes this poem, he reminds us something very important. While science reminded us that we are not the center of the universe, Donne in this poem reminds us that we are not even masters of ourselves. We took up a detailed discussion of Spenser's poems, John Donne's earlier poems, and we were mesmerized by the smooth, soft, strong flow of iambic pentameter. But this poem is different, and it is different for a reason. The meter in the poem is different. Meter, we took up a detailed discussion earlier. Meter actually is beat of the poem, and in this beat, rhythm is the reason of meaning, of flow of sound. Meter basically is responsible for the music of the poem. So in our initial poems, we looked at iambic pentameter. You could take example from any experience of daily life to understand how iambic pentameter works. For example, we write exam and we forget things, and then you want something to appear. So maybe you say, dear pen, be kind and write what I forgot. Look at this. This is iambic pentameter. Actually, English language naturally yields to iambic pentameter. We speak normally in iambic pentameter lines. So see, dear pen, be kind, please write what I forgot. So iambic pentameter. Practice, you could think of many examples of iambic pentameter. But in this poem, the flow of iambic pentameter is broken, and it is broken very loudly with a bang, and a poem, the beats, they demonstrate the cry of the soul. Let us see how. Let us return to the first line of the poem. Batter my heart, three-personed God, for you. That doesn't sound gentle like iambic lines. That's because it is not a regular iambic line. Donne here opens instead with a trochee, a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. So while iamb was unstressed followed by stressed, trochee is stressed followed by unstressed. So it is batter and not batter. Why? Because Donne doesn't knock, he bursts in. Because this is not a polite prayer, it is a spiritual emergency. Batter my heart, three-personed God. So what begins with a trochee then continues further and changes and uses sponde. So let us look at the second and third line of the poem. So what does it say? As yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, overthrow me and bend. So you find ions here, and then you're forced to break, blow, burn and make me new. Instead of soft, strong or strong, soft rhythm, you here find stressed sounds repeated, da sound, and it is not dum da, dum da, dum da. So break, blow, burn. Donne uses sponde. Throughout the poem, Donne uses meter to make us hear the inner cry of the soul, the plea for divine intervention. As you notice the meter and rhythm work in the poem, let us look at the lines closely and read them for both literal and suggested meaning. Why? Because it is very important in Batter My Heart. So let us look at the poem. Batter my heart, three-personed God for you. Batter. The poem begins, like a sound of drum, batter, suggesting not some soft prayer to heal, some soft plea to soothe, but a cry to break, to bend, to burn. So somehow Donne, the lost lover, the lost soul, is making a very strong, powerful plea to God as he opens. And then what he says? Three-personed God. Three-personed God. The moment, now this is the magic of John Donne. Three-personed God is not just a simple reference to Trinity. So we know in Christian theology, Christianity, we have the concept of Trinity. Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. But as Donne brings in this idea of three-personed God, he's not just referring to the concept of Trinity, but he's bringing in the entire cosmic dance, cosmic idea of creation, preservation and destruction into picture. This concept of Trinity is not unique to Christian theology. Ever since the beginning of humanity, as the earth saw the upsurge of great civilizations across the globe, every civilization had concept of Trinity in one form or the other. You may ask question, why? A very obvious answer to this could be because universe manifests itself in Trinity: matter, space, time. So when you look at it, universe manifests itself in three forms: matter, space, time. Again, all these three forms, matter, space and time, also manifest themselves in three forms. Matter, we know it exists in solid, liquid and gas form. Time we perceive in past, present and future. And space we read in length, breadth and height. So maybe it is for this reason that in India also we have concept of Trinity, Trideva, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, where Brahma creates, Vishnu preserves and Shiva destroys. And this is not a break of the rhythm. The cosmic dance of creation, preservation and destruction continues so that the life may move further and further and further. Now, such concept exists in Egyptian civilization also, Chinese civilization also. So, when Donne brings in this idea of Trinity here, when he says three-personed God, it is a prayer to the larger cosmic power which creates, which preserves and which destroys to come here and take charge of Donne, take control of his soul, and not by ease but by force. And therefore he says batter. Why? Because only force can help. So it is Donne's soul which is feeling utterly lost, utterly dejected, and it cries for redemption. And unless and until God intervenes himself, the whole cosmic energy, universal power intervenes itself, there is nothing which is going to change. So batter my heart, three-person God for you. The prayer somehow done is saying, oh God, oh universal cosmic power, do unto me as you would do unto stars. And then he moves further. He says, as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, overthrow me and bend, yet force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. Now, when you look at the words which are used here, words like shine, seek, mend, then break, blow, burn, bend, then it is very obvious, it is very evident. Donne is working a metaphysical conceit here. And the metaphysical conceit here, how it is manifested? Donne becomes the metal, the flawed metal, not some perfect pure metal, but flawed metal. Why? Because so much of bending, so much of burning, so much of mending is required. And God himself, the universal cosmic power himself, becomes the blacksmith. So in this, Donne draws a beautiful metaphysical conceit where he is requesting the God as blacksmith to break, burn, remake, mend the flawed metal Donne has become, his soul has become. So, in the very opening lines, we see a soul crying for help, crying for intervention and forceful intervention. As we move further, we understand why so much of force is what he asks for. So in the next lines, Donne says, I, like an usurped town to another due, labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. I, like an usurped town. So you see, Donne plays with visual imagery, and all these metaphysical conceits, they evoke different visuals in front of us. So initially we looked at him like a flawed metal, and now he brings in the picture of usurped town. So Donne's soul here is represented as a town, a fortress which has been seized, which has been captured. And what does he say? I, like an usurped town to another due, labor to admit you, but oh. So his will has been taken captive, his will is under bondage, and he labors to admit this. Why? Because somehow Donne, when he is writing this sonnet, he is torn from within. And why is he torn from within? Because so much he has experienced in life. He was born a Catholic, then he grows and is raised in the Anglican environment. So he is he is a believer. And in this poem is a sonnet. It is 14-line poem. We did sonnet of Spenser, sonnets of Sidney. And this sonnet is not like the love sonnets of Sidney and Spenser, because here Donne becomes the lover, but the beloved is not an ordinary individual. Beloved is God, and somehow Donne's heart is not in perfect communion with the beloved, but is separated from it, and this separation is something which makes his heart ache. So how does it work? How does it happen? And when he is saying, I, like an usurped town to another due, what does he mean? Donne is bringing in here the tormented heart. So Donne the believer, Donne the lover, wants to be in absolute communion with God. He wants his soul to absolutely trust God and walk on the path to God. But reason, but life, but longings of the worldly life, desire, they all prevent him from absolute surrender to God. So his heart longs for union with God, but his mind somehow yields to temptation. So when he says, I like an usurped town, he basically is referring to his mind, which is capturing his soul, instilling element of distraction, element of doubt in it. And then he moves further. So from a fortress, we move to a captured fortress, we move to a different scene. Donne says further, reason your viceroy in me should defend, but is captived and proves weak or untrue. Reason your viceroy in me. So next conceit which Donne builds up is that of a governor or maybe a monarch. So he says, reason your viceroy in me. Now we started our discussions of this session with the idea that we alone as human beings are capable of abstract thought and we take great pride in it. But Donne here is, addressing that very pride when he is saying that why this reason? And this poem is basically a cry to reason. Why reason? So Donne as a believer believed that God has given us faculty of reason to save us from temptation, to make us believe, to help us remain away from the element of doubt. But what does this reason actually do? Ask yourself. So, does reason make us believe in things absolutely? The answer is no. Why? Because human mind is always at war because of reason. The moment you decide one thing, another idea comes and confronts, right? Questions, makes you doubt your choices, makes you doubt your judgments. So, when Donne says here, reason your viceroy in me should defend but not, he is highlighting that how much, God, you have given me reason to make me capable of having absolute faith in you, to be able to have your knowledge, to make it help me reach nearer and nearer to you. But this reason, it defies me. Instead of helping me, it obstructs the path, it hampers the flow. So this is actually a very, very powerful conceit. So somehow Donne is highlighting that Donne's heart is still committed to God, but reason makes him doubt. So he says, reason, your viceroy in me should defend, but is captived and proves weak or untrue. So it culminates, what started as a prayer for breaking culminates into a well-reasoned prayer for why God must intrude with force, because the help, the agency which God gave to us as human beings to be able to have real knowledge, true knowledge, actually hampers, obstructs the path to knowledge. Now Donne moves further and he says, yet dearly I love you and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. So the scene now moves further. So from the battlefield we went to a captured fortress, then we moved to a divine but powerless monarch, governor, and now we move to a marriage. So Donne says that I still love you, God. My heart is still longing for you. I am so full of longing, of love for you. But then my mind is betrothed to someone else. It is married to someone else. Now, what is it married to? it is married to habit, it is married to desires, it is married to maybe doubt. Now the scene moves further, Donne moves further, and again adds another argument into this plea for divine innovation, intervention. He says, divorce me, untie or break that knot again, take me to you, imprison me, for I, what does he say? Divorce me, untie or break that knot again. So now he moves to one step ahead. He wants God to divorce him from this faculty of reason, from this element of doubt, from this element of temptation which hampers his true love and which comes in between him and God, the lover and the beloved. But then it cannot be done by counseling. It cannot be done by softness. Force is required, and therefore he says, divorce me, untie the knot. So it's like somehow Donne is suggesting that freedom which will take us to our true selves, to God, can come only by absolute force, forceful separation from the worldly life. Unless and until that forceful separation is not there, communion with the truth, the divine, the absolute cannot be possible. And then come the last two lines where he says, except you enthrall me, never. So it continues, sense continues through the lines. So earlier he said, take me to you, imprison me, for I, and now he says, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. So here, how the last and final conceit which John Donne builds up in the poem is that it is the love which conquers. So only when his mind is conquered by absolute faith, absolute love of God, only then he'll be able to be in communion with him. Otherwise, it is not possible. As we are mesmerized by the fire and powerful lines of John Donne's poems, let us take a moment to look at the deeper thematic concerns in the poem, because they make the entire discussion even more meaningful. So, very obvious and first thematic concern is that of spiritual redemption. So, the entire poem basically is a plea, it is a cry for spiritual redemption, where we understand that spiritual redemption is the only thing which adds meaning to the soul's existence. And that takes us to the next theme, where Donne very, very powerfully highlights that this redemption is not free. This freedom from world, actually meeting God, breaking free from this world means in communion with God, the ultimate reality. But this freedom is not free. So this freedom cannot come unless and until absolute surrender takes place. So here he emphasizes this need of absolute surrender. Next thematic concern is in the poem is, violence as grace. One of the thematic concerns which Donne seems to be highlighted in this poem is that violence in life, forced surrender of the will in life also can be seen as grace of God. The troubles and tribulations and trials of life must be seen as grace of God, because they make us reach nearer to what is more powerful, what is really truthful, and what is true knowledge. Now, Donne doesn't settle with themes only. He also puts to use certain motives very powerfully to exercise his impact. So, let us look at the chief motives in the poem. The recurring motives and also symbols used in the poem are war and siege, the soul as a city, held by the enemy. Then marriage and adultery, the covenant of will and the people, the lovers in communion. Then metalwork and fire, transformation through heat, pressure and divine hammer. Finally, captivity and liberation, a cry for imprisonment in God's love, because outside there is only ruin. And all these themes, motifs, symbols, beautiful fiery lines woven in very powerful meter make John Donne's Batter My Heart come out as most powerful cry of soul for redemption, soul's cry for God's intervention in life. This is all for today. In our next session, we'll look at John Donne as a whole. So we'll compare John Donne the lover to John Donne believer. We'll compare his love poems with this holy sonnet and understand the craft, the art of John Donne. And as we also will look at the legacy of John Donne. So this is all for today. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.